The ultimate purpose of spirituality is not to be something I do while seated in a cave or a quiet space, but a way of living, the decisions I make, the actions I express, the quality of my interactions. All of this born out of spirituality. We live in a world of sound, but spirituality actually happens from a world of silence. To live spiritually means that I'm able to master the art of silence inside while coming into sound outside. Silence inside means there is the experience of what is eternal or timeless in my mind and heart. And so I do not succumb to the forces of attachment or desires. I'm free. I'm able to see, think, decide more clearly, and interact with complete benevolence from a place of fullness or contentment, freedom. That inner silence is everything. Not to be separated from day-to-day life, but the place from which I operate in day-to-day life. This is living spiritually. Om Shanti.
to interview Tamashigi. Tonight's topic is the uniqueness of everybody. I would feel that this is actually inspired by the foundation of the study, which is soul consciousness, and how is it really relevant constantly in interactions with individuals. But just perhaps inspired by today's morning class, which is all about soul consciousness. And I was also touched by the meditation commentary of how to stay anchored in your quality of your efforts, of what you experience of yourself, that fullness and what that does in terms of others, your perception of them, your interactions with them. So, something that you shared earlier, Sister Judy, in terms of not perhaps directly learning to try to appreciate others, which of course is a lovely aspect of one's character to have. Could you share about, through the lens of Raja Yoga, what is the intention of Raja Yoga, and where does this appreciation of others, how does that come? Is it something that, because we're always concerned about being contrived, we're also concerned about making sure that we stay in our integrity, but that's also benefiting everyone as well. And so if you have some thoughts to share.
Om Shanti. Please let us know if the sound is not good, or sometimes a challenge with the microphone. So the ultimate objective of Raj Yoga or any robust spiritual practice is to really restore a state of peace and happiness. So that's very central in Raj Yoga. So then we have to understand what exactly creates peace and happiness, what is true peace and happiness. And the first thing that we suggest is that they're not reactions, that they have something to do not with something happened outside of me. I was in the mountains, so I felt more peaceful. Someone gave me a gift, so I was happy, because we know the next day there could be a natural disaster in the mountain and it can create a lot of peacelessness. Or that same person who gave me a gift suddenly doesn't like me the next day. So very fickle. So that means that it becomes very unstable, this thing that's so important to me, peace and happiness. So we suggest it's a function of something going on inside. And it turns out that peace is really being at peace with the self. It's our true nature. Very, very healthy inner world is peaceful. And happiness is a result of moving through the world aligned with my true self, my true identity, really being my authentic self as I move through the world creates happiness. So this is where being stable in the uniqueness, the realness of the self starts to tie in. Sometimes I think the spiritual endeavor be very selfish, that I'm going for my own peace and happiness. But this is where it becomes interesting. It turns out that our true self is actually a spiritual identity. And that true self, that spiritual identity at the core is benevolent. We're actually spiritually built. Our spiritual DNA is to be benevolent, kind. So very almost selfless. When I move through the world being kind and respectful, I am happy. That's the basic equation, simplified. We use the word pure, but it's these wonderful, respectful feelings for the self and others. When I move through the world this way, so in order to do that, I really have to make this, I have to be very connected to the self in my own self-respect, very full, very powerful, pure of heart. So a lot of inner work to get the self into a healthy spiritual state, and then holding that through moving through the world very, as we say, silent or detached, so that I'm constantly operating from that authentic place, my true self. And that means I'm at peace with myself and I'm expressing myself in a way that creates inner happiness.
When you mentioned about being at peace with myself, and in terms of being at peace with things that are coming up inside, is that part of just my natural nature coming up, or is that what I'm learning through having a lens of truth of myself? Because being at peace with myself, could it be sometimes perhaps maybe in a sense conditional, or is it that my natural nature? When you talk about soul consciousness, and perhaps maybe this is sometimes souls may not realize that we're doing a bit of symptom management in terms of, is it really actually soul consciousness that one is actually practicing? Do you find that just the more I focus on experiencing my natural nature, that you just become one who's at peace with whatever is going on, whether it's good or bad, whatever it's, as you're saying, someone gives you a gift and the next day they don't give you a gift, because in subtle ways for one to discern, is that peace really still a reaction, or is it really my real nature?
I think as we move along, we become more and more discerning as to whether I'm really getting to the seed of things or managing the symptoms. And the seed is suggested, in that one word, I, how I identify myself. And if I do have the faith, I am a soul, I will consistently keep moving to refine and deepen my understanding. I had an interesting conversation yesterday with a soul, and she was very high level athlete, winter sports, National Olympics, the whole 9 yards. And now she's very fit still, but she's a mom. She still loves to be very active. When she was training, it was a winter sport that required a lot of power. So she did a lot of Olympic lifting, crazy stuff. But where I see her in classes now, I didn't know any of this. The classes she likes to do a lot now are core stability, deep alignment, mobility. And so we had a very fascinating conversation as she moved through became more and more mature, moved through her active life, and arriving at the understanding, the recognition, which could only happen at this point in her journey, that's really where fitness is happening, is at the deep level and enjoying it. And I see her in class and she's excellent. I mean, she's lucky. She has very good awareness, but now she's applying that awareness at something quite deep. And that recognition came after moving through the journey. The objective's the same, well-being, but it shifted as she gets closer and closer to the seed or foundation of good mechanics of well-being. I find the same spiritually as well. Yes, it's possible when we start, we recognize the importance of soul consciousness, of seeing myself in a deep way as a spiritual being, not in a superficial way. And yet I still might be quite superficial in my efforts at the beginning. Even though I recognize the seed, I might still kind of be dancing around it. That's okay. I stick with it, and slowly, slowly we keep maturing and we get closer and closer to truly experiencing the seed. So this, again, this real faith that we are souls and that will keep pulling, that true self will keep pulling us to itself. Such a deep longing to reconnect with the self that will just keep, because it's mostly just letting go and surrendering that allows us to get closer and closer to the seed. And although that's a it's a release. It's one of those challenging things for us to do at this time.
So why I asked that question in terms of the topic of uniqueness of every being is really about appreciating others. And what is that? It's about still being able to maintain that sense of peace no matter what I'm doing. I was very young in the study when I remember you had shared, I believe you were the recipient of the Peace Medal Awards at the YMCA. And it shared about peace is a personality trait. It's a response, not a reaction, something to that effect, the essence of what that shared. I remember I was so young in the study, I didn't actually understand what that meant. It's like, what do you mean a reaction? What do you mean a response? It felt like perhaps maybe being spiritually numb, not even being able to tell the difference between the two. And it seems like from this morning's class about the quality of soul consciousness, what emerged from that was not necessarily about trying to, overtly appreciate them for who they are, but the part of being a master of your inner world is that you are anchored in a deep quality of a sense of who you are, and you actually become very free to let everyone play their own part. Something you said earlier today in relation to this, when you said, well, what if the person, who gave you a gift today, they don't like you tomorrow, lovely nature today, suddenly there's some sort of, natural disaster tomorrow. I'm just wondering, perhaps maybe it's not the soul's timing to actually care. Maybe they just want to enjoy things now, and whatever happens tomorrow, happens tomorrow. To be able to appreciate everyone has their own timing, I don't think that that's an easy thing to do. And so I just wanted to hear your thoughts in terms of why someone would want to, value that, and again, just what's required to be able to do that to remain stable, regardless of what everyone is like.
I suppose one of the signs that I am genuinely getting closer to the seed is that I'm more and more okay with what everyone is doing. And ironically, my attitude of being okay with what everyone is doing helps them to come closer to themselves. So it's kind of counterintuitive. We feel we should push and, spiritually slap them up, but it's actually the opposite. That vision plays a very important role in spirituality. We use the word drishti. And there's 3 visions that have incredible power. We know it's because there's a saying, God changes the world with a look. So we know there's incredible power in how I see things and how I look at things in terms of inspiring change and transformation. Of course, the first one is how I look at myself. And that's going to keep changing as I, move along. A big one is being able to experience how God looks at me. That is huge, to be able to not project how I think God is looking at me, but to get all of that out of the way and be in a position where I can receive God's vision on me. That's going to pull me forward a great deal. And then I'll actually be able to give that gift to someone else, to look at someone else the way God looks at them. So to be that kind of conduit will also help. And the way God looks is so clean, sees everything, very pure, not a trace of judgment or criticism, definitely not comparing or competing. Very clean, sees everything, but recognizes the seed, recognizes what is true, timeless, and original. To be seen in that way is extremely empowering. I want to be able to do it for myself. I see all the superficial, the layers, the flaws, the mistakes. I see it all. But I have what we call recognition or deep faith in who I truly am. And to be able, it's said this is like giving a blessing, to be able to have that same kind of vision for someone else. So experimenting on the self, experiencing through relationship with God, and then expressing that towards others is perhaps the only way we can move ourselves and others along.
This isn't meant to be a yes or no question, but it might sound like it. But what you're sharing, I was thinking about what is really the definition of the experience of spiritual freedom. Because listening to you share, I feel like you're talking about this is a baseline I'm trying to experience of who I am. And usually when we hear freedom, it usually is, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm running away. And just something you had shared earlier is that if I can be free, anchored in my sense of self, it frees others to be able to become real in a genuine way. So to tell the difference between freedom, which is, I realize it, it's avoidance, it's running away, it's even the word detachment is such an interesting word. Some look at that word and they have a completely different experience of it. Spirituality also has for some, a perception that it is about running away from situations, moving off into forests. Again, those are choices that souls make. But how to tell the difference in terms of the freedom, what we may be perceiving is that is actually avoiding, separating, disconnecting, versus what you're talking about.
In a worldly way, often hearing freedom, which is two sides of the same coin, either doing whatever I want, which can be very desire driven. So I'm not actually free at all. I'm in bondage to these addictions or desires inside, or trying to free myself from that dynamic, which is the escaping or avoiding you talked about. But when I think about in Raj Yoga, when I think of freedom as liberating, like liberating a bird from a cage or someone who's been in jail or bondage, that I'm actually liberating something inside. So rather than trying to avoid or push away or not even discern who I am not, I'm actually liberating who I am. And so that, again, that vision, that recognition, that realization of self is the key to liberate this incredible capacity of the self. And then I've got the key through my vision to liberate others as well. So that's how I think of the freedom in this context. It's actually liberating what is in there already.
In terms of this piece of inner freedom, as we move through this journey, and we're talking about in the lens of Raj Yoga, do you find also this inner freedom strengthened so that you can see old things inside, still expectations from others, maybe expectations of myself, old habits, that comes up often in terms of a lot of our interviews, that there's a perception that we can have in spirituality, and we may not even realize it. And I think we mentioned about it in a couple of sessions ago about maybe some sort of suppressing or controlling or feeling bad because some of these old things come up. We may be having again, a perception of spirituality. It's, rainbows and puppy dogs. I'm not sure, but it's not. Souls often find that how is spirituality, real? How is it relevant? How am I dealing with that inside?
This is to me, one of the top signs that I actually am connecting to the seed, that I really, truly am becoming soul conscious, experiencing myself as a soul, the wonder, the unique wonder of the self as a spiritual being, who I really am, is that I now can look at what was created when I forgot myself, all of those things you spoke about, from a place of power, of authenticity, a very pure. We use the term detached observer, And I often think of it as compassionate observer, that I no longer am going to be upset or judge or any reprimand when I see these aspects of the self that were created when I forgot myself. Now that I've remembered myself, there's such an understanding attitude, and there's great power for change in an understanding attitude. A judging attitude keeps things stuck. It really just glosses over what is there. But an understanding attitude can transform. So I'm standing in the truth and I'm looking at illusion. I'm not disturbed. I completely understand it, and it kind of melts. You know, my one of my favorite scenes, and I have mixed feelings about it because I think we make some of these stories actually quite harsh. But in The Wizard of Oz, the original one, the thing that finished, if you will, or melted the Wicked Witch was when water was poured on her. That was the one thing that would melt her. They tried all sorts of stuff, but then by accident, water was poured on her, and this melted the witch. And not necessarily condoning that plot line, but the concept of what does that water represent. So we always talk about the water of knowledge, the water of understanding, that this darkness, this not me, these illusions inside that I have been living through, they start to melt when I shine the light of understanding. So it's a very compassionate approach to managing the self, but it first demands that I have a very good experience of who I am. So I can stand there and be in an understanding attitude towards what is not me.
Thank you so much, Sister Janie. We will have a little reflection.
Just for the moment, I make the choice to shift my consciousness, my reference point about myself. I consider or entertain the idea that this body in which I sit, made of matter, belongs to that outer physical world. And I belong to spirituality. I am this point of spiritual energy operating through the body, operating from behind the forehead, life, beginning to feel my mind cool down and calm down, to hold this idea, this possibility. And like a rare, one of a kind jewel, I start to see myself with different eyes. It's not relative to the body in which I sit, or the people I know, or the things I do, or what I own. It's not relative to anything. It's intrinsic to myself. A sense of self that is independent of anything physical or temporal. Just me, the being, with a unique inner beauty, at peace with myself as a soul. Nothing to prove, nothing to defend or show. Just the joy of getting to know myself once again. Om Shanti.
Shanti, thank you for joining with us this evening. I don't know if there's any particular announcements. We did get new dates for Learn About Meditation, but we will have those posted on the website. Some updating needs to happen on there, but please do check our website, brahmakumaris.ca/Calgary. If you have any questions about any sessions, you're welcome to email us at calgary@ca.brahmakumaris.org. But we still have our evening sessions, drop-in sessions at the Inner Peace Center on English on Mondays, 6:30 to 7:30, Wednesdays in Hindi, 6:30 to 7:30, and our evening sessions online here on YouTube. Thank you for joining with us. Om Shanti.